A 5,000-year-old map should not show a land beneath the Pacific, but this one does. Not an island, not a coastline, not a sailor's guess drawn from rumor, a land. A buried shape below the ocean, marked with roots, symbols, and strange boundary lines that seem to point to a place no ancient civilization should have known existed. That is what makes this map so disturbing. Because 5,000 years ago, there were no satellites, no deep-sea scans, no sonar maps, and no modern ocean surveys. Ancient people could map rivers, mountains, trade roads, and kingdoms they had seen with their own eyes. But a land beneath the Pacific? That should have been impossible. If this map is only myth, then it is one of the oldest memories of a lost world beneath the sea. But if it preserves even a distorted fragment of ancient knowledge, then the Pacific may not be hiding only shipwrecks and volcanic islands. It may be hiding the outline of a drowned land mankind was never supposed to forget. Stay until the end, because the final markings on the map may reveal not only where this hidden land lies, but why the ancient cartographer marked it as forbidden. To understand why this 5,000-year-old map should not exist, we have to begin with the impossible part, not its age, not its strange symbols, not even the fact that it points toward the Pacific. The impossible part is that it seems to show land where there should only be ocean. A buried shape beneath the water, a hidden outline under the Pacific, a place marked not like open sea, but like something that had once mattered. And that creates the first question the map refuses to answer. How could anyone 5,000 years ago know what was beneath the Pacific Ocean? Ancient people were not ignorant. That is the mistake modern people make. They knew the stars. They tracked seasons, they navigated rivers, they crossed deserts, they built cities aligned with the heavens and temples that survived longer than empires. But mapping the deep ocean is different. You can see a mountain, you can follow a river, you can walk a coastline, you can mark a trade route from city to city, but you cannot see through miles of water. You cannot draw the shape of a land beneath the Pacific unless one of three things is true. Someone saw it before it sank, someone inherited the memory from people who had seen it, or someone had access to knowledge that should not have existed in their time. That is the first open loop. Because if the map is wrong, then we are looking at a myth drawn as geography. But if the map is even partly right, then we are looking at something far more disturbing. A memory of a drowned world. The map itself is not described like a modern chart. It does not have neat borders, latitude lines, or scientific measurements. It speaks in an older visual language, roots, symbols, boundary marks, warning signs, and shapes that seem to represent water, depth, and forbidden approach. To a modern eye, that can look primitive, but primitive does not mean meaningless. Ancient maps often did more than show distance. They showed danger, they showed sacred zones, they showed the known world, yes, but also the edges of what should not be entered. Some maps were practical, some were ritual, some were warnings disguised as directions. And this map feels like the third kind, because the land beneath the Pacific is not drawn like a place to conquer. It is not surrounded by signs of trade. There are no welcoming ports, no friendly coastal markers, no symbols of harvest, kingship, or settlement. Instead, the markings around it suggest distance, silence, and restriction. As if the ancient cartographer was not saying, "Go here." He was saying, "Remember this place, but do not approach it." That changes the story, because a lost land is mystery. A forbidden lost land is warning. Imagine the person who first held the map thousands of years ago, not in a museum, not behind glass, not under the clean light of a modern laboratory, but in a room lit by oil flame, with smoke darkening the ceiling and the sound of waves somewhere beyond the walls. A scribe or priest bends over the surface, copying an older pattern from a source already ancient in his own time. He does not fully understand every mark. Some of the names have become ritual phrases. Some of the routes no longer match the world he knows, but one region remains clear, a vast stretch of water, and beneath it a landform, not drawn as mythic chaos, drawn with edges, drawn with route lines, drawn with boundary marks. He pauses before copying the final symbol, the forbidden mark, because whoever made the earlier version wanted that warning preserved, not erased, not explained, preserved. That is how ancient memory survives, not as clean history, as fragments, a flood story, a drowned city, a route that ends in open water, a map showing land where no land should be. And this is where the Pacific becomes important. The Pacific is not just an ocean. It is enormous. It covers more of the planet than any ancient empire could have imagined in full. Its islands are scattered across distances so vast that even today, looking at a map, the emptiness feels almost unreal. But emptiness can hide patterns. Under the Pacific are ridges, plateaus, trenches, volcanic chains, submerged shelves, and lost continental fragments. The seafloor is not flat. It is a buried landscape. Mountains underwater, valleys underwater, plains underwater, ancient scars where the earth cracked and moved. Modern science can map those hidden shapes with instruments, but 5,000 years ago, there should have been no way. And yet the map points downward. That is the problem. Not that ancient people imagined a lost land. Many cultures did. The problem is the way the map marks it, as if the place had position, boundary, and memory. The second open loop is even more unsettling. Was the land still above water when the first version of the map was created? Because 5,000 years is old. But human memory can be older than writing. Stories can travel across generations long after the original disaster is gone. A coastline can drown. A settlement can vanish. Survivors can move inland, carrying a simplified map, a sacred route, and a warning about the sea that swallowed their homeland. Over time, the real land becomes legend. The legend becomes ritual. The ritual becomes symbol. The symbol is copied onto a map by someone who no longer knows whether the place was real. But the outline remains. This is how lost worlds survive inside human culture. Not as perfect records, as echoes, and the map may be one of those echoes. A memory of a place that disappeared before the people who drew the final version could fully explain it. But there is another possibility, darker. What if the map was not meant to show a land that sank naturally? What if it shows a land that was deliberately hidden? The boundary symbols around the Pacific region do not feel like ordinary coastline marks. They feel like seals. Like warnings, like a line drawn not to measure a place, but to separate it from the world of men. Ancient cultures often treated certain lands as taboo, forbidden mountains, caves no one entered, islands of the dead, cities punished by the gods, waters that no ship should cross. So a land beneath the Pacific may have been remembered not simply because it was lost, but because something about it was feared. What happened there? A flood? A war? A collapse? A contact with something the survivors believed should remain beneath the sea. That is the third open loop. The map does not only show where the land is, it seems to show why it should not be reached. And that is where the story stops being about geography and becomes something older. A warning from a people who believed the ocean was not merely water. It was a seal. Now we have to look at the markings around the hidden land. Because the land itself is strange, but the symbols around it are worse. There are route lines leading toward the Pacific, but they do not continue cleanly into the marked region. They break, they turn, they stop before reaching the center. That is not how travel maps usually work. A route that leads nowhere is useless, unless the purpose is not to guide someone in, but to show where the safe path ends. This may be the most important detail on the map. The ancient cartographer seems to know the direction of the hidden land, but refuses to complete the road. That tells us something. Either the final route was unknown, or it was forbidden. And on the edge of the marked region, there is a symbol repeated more than once. A boundary sign, sometimes interpreted as water, silence, or danger, depending on how the map is read. It appears like a warning placed around the sunken land. Not decoration, protection. As if the map maker wanted future readers to understand that the place existed, but also understand that existence did not mean permission. This is the difference between a lost land and a sealed land. A lost land invites search. A sealed land warns against it. The map seems to hold both ideas at once. It says, this place was known. And then it says, do not cross the mark. That contradiction gives the map its power. Why preserve a forbidden place at all? Why not erase it completely? The answer may be memory. When something terrible happens, survivors do not always erase the location. They mark it. They ritualize it. They tell their children where not to go. The forbidden place becomes part of identity. A village tells of the mountain that swallowed fire. A tribe avoids the valley where voices are heard at night. A city refuses to build over a burial ground. A sailor draws a line around waters no ship should enter. Forbidden memory is still memory. And this map may be preserving one of the oldest forbidden memories on Earth. Imagine a group of survivors after a great ocean disaster. They stand on a new shore, far from the place they once knew. Behind them are boats, broken tools, children too young to understand why the elders no longer speak the old name. Ahead of them is land, but not home. One elder carries a copy of the route, not because they plan to return, because they must remember why they cannot. He points to the marked region beneath the Pacific and says, there was land there. Then he points to the boundary symbol and says, but the sea took it, and what the sea takes men do not reclaim. Over generations, that warning changes form. The sunken land becomes sacred, then dangerous, then mythic, then impossible. But the map remains, copied again, simplified, encoded, misunderstood. Until thousands of years later, someone looks at the strange shape under the Pacific and realizes it should not be there. This is where the age of the map matters. At 5,000 years old, it sits near the dawn of written civilization. But the knowledge inside it may be older than the object itself. Ancient maps often copied earlier sources. A clay tablet could preserve a tradition that had already survived orally for centuries, maybe longer. So the object may be 5,000 years old, but the memory could be older, much older. That opens a frightening possibility. The map may not be a snapshot of what its maker knew directly. It may be the last visible layer of a memory chain stretching back to a forgotten catastrophe, a drowned coastline, a destroyed island system, a lost route across the ocean, a land that became impossible only after it disappeared. And if that is true, then the Pacific was not always imagined as empty. Somewhere in the deep past, someone believed there was something there worth marking. But the final markings complicate the story, because beside the hidden land, the map does not show ordinary settlement signs, no fields, no rulers, no ships drawn proudly around it. Instead, the symbols seem closer to silence, depth, and prohibition. This suggests the map maker was not simply remembering a homeland. He was remembering a place associated with danger, a place that may have been connected to a collapse so great it became taboo. What kind of collapse could do that? A sudden rise in the sea, a volcanic explosion, a chain of earthquakes, a civilization destroyed by water. Or, in the language of ancient mystery, a land that sank because something beneath it awakened. Of course, we have to be careful. A map like this does not prove a lost civilization beneath the Pacific. It does not prove that ancient people had sonar. It does not prove that a hidden continent lies waiting intact under the waves. But mystery does not require certainty to become powerful. It requires a detail that should not fit. And this map has that detail. A land beneath the Pacific, a route toward it, a boundary around it, and a final warning mark that seems to say the place was not merely unknown, it was forbidden. Now imagine the map being studied in the present. The surface is worn, some lines are broken, the symbols are damaged. At first, experts disagree on what they are seeing. One says it is ritual geography, another says it is mythic ocean, another says the lines are symbolic, not cartographic. But then someone overlays the route direction against the Pacific, and the marked region lines up with a real underwater feature. Not perfectly, not like a modern chart, but close enough to make the room go quiet. A plateau, a submerged ridge, a hidden landform beneath the ocean. The kind of shape no ancient mapmaker should have known was there. Suddenly, the question changes. Not, is the map accurate, but why is it even close? That is the moment the story becomes dangerous, because one coincidence can be ignored, two can be debated. But a map that is old, points to the Pacific, shows land below water, marks a broken route, and places warning symbols around it begins to feel less like imagination and more like inherited memory. The final symbol on the map is the most unsettling. It is placed not on the route, not on the coastline, but over the hidden land itself, a mark associated in the story with prohibition. Do not enter, do not wake, do not return. That final symbol tells us the ancient cartographer did not simply believe the land was gone. He believed it was sealed. And if a land beneath the Pacific was sealed, then the ocean is not just covering it. The ocean is guarding it. By this point, the map has given us three impossible ideas. Someone knew of a land beneath the Pacific, someone marked a route toward it, and someone warned future readers not to go there. Now the final question becomes unavoidable. What was on that land that made the ancient world choose to remember it and forbid it at the same time? And now we reach the final marking on the map, the one placed directly over the hidden land beneath the Pacific, not beside the route, not along the boundary, over the land itself, a warning mark, a seal, a symbol that seems to say the place was not simply drowned, but forbidden. This is where the map becomes impossible to dismiss as ordinary ancient imagination. Because if the map maker only wanted to describe a lost island, why mark it with prohibition? If he only wanted to preserve a memory of a vanished homeland, why break the route before it reaches the center? And if the land was completely gone, why warn anyone not to return? That is the twist. The map does not treat the land as dead. It treats it as sealed. The ocean is not drawn like empty water. It is drawn like a lid, and the route does not look like a road to discovery. It looks like the last safe path before a boundary no one was meant to cross. Imagine the final moment of the ancient cartographer. He copies the coastline, he marks the stars, he draws the route across the water, then his hand reaches the hidden land. He stops. Because this symbol is not guidance, it is fear. The final mark says the land still matters. It says something remains there, not a city with open gates, not a kingdom waiting for trade, not a paradise swallowed by accident. Something beneath the Pacific that ancient memory refused to erase, but also refused to invite anyone toward. And that may be the most terrifying possibility of all. The map was not made to help people find the land. It was made to make sure they understood why it must stay lost. So what does this 5,000-year-old map really leave us with? A shape beneath the Pacific, a route that points toward it, then breaks, boundary symbols surrounding it, and a final warning mark placed over the hidden land itself. Maybe the map is myth, maybe the strange land is symbolic, a sacred ocean region, a memory of a flood, a misunderstood coastline, or a ritual drawing of a world that never existed physically. Maybe the apparent connection to underwater geography is coincidence, interpretation, or the result of later readers trying to make damaged lines fit modern ideas. But even if all of that is true, the map still reveals something powerful. Ancient people remembered the ocean as more than emptiness. They saw it as a keeper of lost places, a covering, a boundary, a force that could swallow land, erase routes, and turn history into warning. And if the map preserves even a fragment of older memory, then the Pacific may not be hiding only geological formations and forgotten shipwrecks. It may be hiding one of humanity's oldest fears, that somewhere beneath the water lies a place that was once known and deliberately forbidden. That is why the map should not exist, not because ancient people could not imagine lost lands. They could, but because this map seems to remember one with a route, a boundary, and a warning. A lost land invites explorers. A forbidden land asks a much darker question. What happened there that made the ancient world decide no one should go back? And if this 5,000-year-old map shows a forbidden land beneath the Pacific, there is another ancient account that describes a lost route across the ocean, one that may have led to the same place before it vanished. Watch that video next, because once you understand the route, the hidden land stops looking like a myth and starts looking like a destination someone tried to erase.